Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Farrah, and in today's video I'm going to run through my top 5 nonfiction books of the year. Sorry, I'm out of breath. I've just been walking around for a while. So this year I didn't read quite as many nonfiction books as I would have liked to, but what I did read I mostly really enjoyed. So I'm just going to run through my 5 favorite books of the year nonfiction. I'm going to put a picture here of all the nonfiction I read just so you can get an idea of the pool that I'm choosing from. And it's just a mixture of mostly memoirs, some health related, some science or nature related nonfiction, and some cultural nonfiction. So I would have to say I loved everything I read, mostly everything I read, but these on the list are 4.5 stars and above. And most of it, you guys probably can guess the videos over the past couple months, but I would have to say in the number 5 spot, I'm going to pick my only 4.5, which was The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And this is kind of like part memoir, part journey into the psyche of the human body, and what happens to the body when somebody holds on to or experiences post-traumatic stress and severe trauma, and how that experience is held in the brain and how it continues to filter and trickle down into all parts of our body, and what that does to us and what that creates within our experience, and how our sense of reality is different from somebody that hasn't had those experiences. So what I really liked about this book was that I thought that the way the book was put together in terms of him recounting his early years as a psychologist and working his way up through school and into psychiatry, it's really told in a nice narrative nonfiction sort of way. And you really get a sense of who Dr. van der Kolk was as a person and a practitioner, as well as getting to know his patients. So he does focus a lot on PTSD, primarily from war veterans. Most often noted is, that went through the Vietnam War, and people that have gone through childhood abuse, whether that be physical, mental, or sexual. So in terms of the trauma, he does get very deep and dark into the trauma, like it's real people's accounts of what's happened, and that's very difficult to read, super hard to read. But if you can get through that, I think that the way he explains things and the physiology in the body and the behavioral patterns that the brain gets into, it's really interesting. And it kind of teaches you that this is why you might have been feeling this particular way. It's not your fault. It's like this natural thing that occurs when the body experiences situations like this. And then the second half of the book is really interesting because he goes into the treatments and over time, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what's currently really working now. So I just thought it was a really well done book, very readable, but also difficult to read if you're somebody that has been through any of the trauma mentioned. I would say that just be really careful looking into the trigger warnings and things like that. But all over, it was an amazing book. So next on the list is my graphic novel pick. And this was an amazing graphic novel series I read back in the beginning of the year called March by John Lewis. And this is his account of his experience of the civil rights movement back when in his younger years, teenage and 20 and into his 20s, and what it was like for him and how he joined this civil rights movement. And it was an amazing graphic novel. The illustrations were really well done. The storytelling in the graphic novel type of format was really well done. It just really brings you there. It puts you in those situations, those nonviolent protests, those sit-ins, and you just learn so much about what went on and the people that were involved. And I really enjoyed learning about that part of history. And it was so inspiring to see these people and what they went through and how they made such a difference in the world, and just absolutely amazing. I was so moved by this 3 trilogy of graphic novels. So I highly recommend it if you're looking to get into the civil rights movement and learning more about that. Next on the list is my favorite memoir of the year, and this was called I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jenette McCurdy. No shock here. This was a fantastic memoir. You guys, I'm sure, have heard all about it in other people's videos, but I really enjoyed this. And this is what I think makes this such an amazing memoir is that you don't really have to know Jenette McCurdy to really enjoy this. I didn't really know who she was before picking up. I picked it up because of the hype, to be honest. And it's so amazingly and beautifully well told. And it really brings you into her world of what it was like growing up as a child actress, kind of being pushed into acting against her will by her mother, her narcissistic mother, who basically teaches her how to become anorexic. And, you see what happens to her going through this, and you see this heartbreaking need and desire for her to get her mother's, to make her mother happy without realizing this toxic relationship that they had, and seeing Jenette kind of slowly realize that as she grows older, and the revolution she has when she finally realizes, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is what's been happening, and how she heals from it. It's just a beautifully well told, amazingly moving memoir that I really enjoyed. So the last two on my list are interchangeable. I cannot pick a favorite. They're so amazing, both of them, that I can't. And you probably can guess what they are. But yes, first we're going to start with Endurance, Shackleton's incredible Voyage by Alfred Lansing. And this is a historical nonfiction book about the account of the failed attempt in 1914 of Ernest Shackleton, who was a polar explorer, and his crew of 27 men and over 60 dogs, as they tried to venture from Britain all the way down to Antarctica to make the first transcontinental expedition. And what happened when their ship got stuck in the ice packs and eventually crushed, and they had to learn how to survive on these giant sheets of ice floating through the Arctic Ocean, trying to find open water and trying to figure out how they're going to find land. And then once they find land, how they're going to find the nearest point of civilization using basic navigational tools and basic survival equipment. And it was absolutely amazing. What I loved about this so much was the way it was told. It was told in such a moving way. I mean, it was told, it was written almost 50 years after the actual account, but the author took journal entries and interviews and created this amazing, beautiful story that really contrasted the beauty of the environment with the isolation and the desolation of their situation. And it was such an amazing book, and a good look at how much the human spirit can undertake as long as there's hope that things will be okay. I absolutely loved it. I loved it. And then lastly, one of my favorite books, nonfiction of the year, is going to be An Immense World by Ed Yong. And this is an environmental nature nonfiction book about how animals perceive the world around them using all the senses that we may not have access to, or we just don't experience the same way that they do. And what I loved about this book so much is that he did such a great job of putting you in that animal's experience and showing you what it might look like and feel like to have that sense. And he just had such a passion for this topic, and you could feel that through the page. And I loved his style of writing. It was very narrative nonfiction. It was very readable. The examples he gave of each animal were so fascinating to me, and it was just a fantastic read. I absolutely loved it. So those are my 5 favorite nonfiction books of the year. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you'll check some of these out if you haven't before. And if you've read any of these, I'd love to know what you thought of them. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in my next video.